Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today, it is my honor to have Brieanna Quinn with us.
Here's a story of a fundraiser who was launching his very own web show. Each episode is very short due to edits, so it can really flow. Here's a story of a podcast guest star who was busy raising money of their own. They were each great in their own way, fundraising in its own. Till the one day when Jack asked a guest to join him, and they knew it was much more than a jest, that these guests must somehow form a resource. That's the way they all became the podcast guests. The podcast guests, the podcast guests. That's the way they became the podcast guests.
Brieanna is the Director of Individual Giving at Merit America. She has over 20 years of philanthropic development experience, raising record-setting donations at higher education institutions and national nonprofits. After graduating from the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy with a master's in philanthropic studies, she spent over a decade working for small and large universities, building comprehensive annual giving programs. Over the last decade, she worked in K-12 education advocacy and policy organizations where she was responsible for corporate and foundation giving, high net worth individual giving, and building a culture of philanthropy. She brings an innovative and collaborative approach where meaningful change is possible. In addition, Brieanna understands that developing thoughtful relationships takes time and approaches each encounter thoughtfully to ensure solid and lasting relationships with internal and external stakeholders. In her free time, you can find Brieanna at the gym lifting weights, hanging out with her mini goldendoodle Maelyn, or watching football in the fall. Based out of Indianapolis, Indiana, the month of May is spent at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway gearing up for the Indy 500. Well, welcome, Brieanna.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, Brieanna, you've been in the fundraising business for quite some time, specifically in the educational arena. So we've all been on some amazing canvases or asks, as the non-Canadians call it, or solicitations. So tell me about one of the best asks that you were on and kind of why it was the best.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as I was preparing for this call or this, podcast, this conversation that we were going to have today. And it's funny, like I've had so many great visits with a wide variety of people, but it's hard to pin down just one. And here's what I will say to that. The best visits for me are the ones where I have been able to connect a donor with someone that is going to benefit from the support. And so whether that is bringing a donor to an event that we're having, when I was at Stand for Children, which is an education and advocacy organization that really works to empower parents, anytime that I'm able to bring a parent or a recipient in and really have them tell their story and that connection, I see my role as a facilitator. I do not see my role as like the end all be all. In fact, I prefer as the fundraiser to really just ask questions. And so I figured that this question would come up, and I really I feel like I'm skirting the answer, but for me, it's not so much about the amount of the ask. It's about the opportunity to really connect the philanthropic vision of the donor and the individual recipients that we are having. So I think anytime I'm able to do that, it's successful. I've asked for $1 million. I've asked for $500,000. If you want a specific example, I will say probably the most impactful was when I worked at Stand for Children again. We were basically told, this foundation will not support you. They will not. And I thought, okay, why not? What's the reason? And essentially, we had a political aspect of our organization, and this foundation wanted to stay away from the 501c4, supporting school board candidates, whatever. And so my idea was, well, let's just go in and start having conversations with them and introduce them to our parents and introduce them to the organizers that are really doing the on the ground, the C3 work. And through the course of a year, we were able to engage them, bring them into the work, really see that impact, and ended up with a $500,000 grant. And so just because you hear no, it could be no because of that, it could be no because of some assumptions that people are making about the work that you're doing. It could be no because it's not the right time. It could be no because it's not the right ask. And so I think that just having the opportunity to really engage with our parents and the organizers and the people that did the work on the ground with the parents, that funder saw like, oh, okay, they were able to see the more holistic approach to the work that we're doing.
It's really interesting. Let me just unpack a couple of themes that you spoke about that I thought was really poignant. Number one is fundraising is a means to an end, not an end in and of itself, right? So it's all about solving whatever problem is out there and the donor's journey and where those kind of interests intersect. Yep. The other part that I thought was really interesting was the person met with you. Very rarely will someone take the time to meet with you, use their time and your time and tell you, no, I'm never giving, unless, of course, they have a bee in their bonnet that they just want to get off their chest. Most people have an idea of what they like, but it might not have been the right fit for the right program that you pitch. And as it turned out, you found something. So they were still, enamored with your organization. You just had to make sure the fit wasn't exactly lining
Correct.
up for them. So it took a little bit of time. So I think that's really the interesting part, right? Is that, you kind of massaged it and you didn't go in with a fully baked cake and say, here it is, take it or leave it. And we're only selling the cake. You thought of, some other ways to kind of massage it.
That's so important. And I think that your listeners and just people in general need to realize is that don't go in with a fully baked cake. I have worked, I've done this work for so long, and there's been organizations where they want to go in and say everything that they can. And they have a PowerPoint that is 60 slides, and it's a lot. And to me, it's about having conversations. And I mean, I once told an executive director, like, did you propose to your wife on your first date? No, it's a relationship. You're getting to know those people. And so you don't have to dump it all on the first day. Like, let's get to know them. Let's have them ask questions. Because guess what? We could put something on that slide deck that just is offensive to their sensibilities, and we're done. And so let's just get to know them. We don't have to have everything baked. The cake does not have to be done.
Right. So if we were to take the flip side of this, which is we've all been on some horrible canvases that have gone sideways. So tell me about one of the asks that you did that didn't turn out quite as you had hoped.
I'm going to go way far back. Like, this is one of my very first visits. I was in leadership annual giving, had just kind of started my philanthropy career, and was really, really excited to be on my first trip by myself. And I was going out to California, and I was meeting with this gentleman in Palm Springs. And when I showed up, he asked me every question about the institution that I was working for under the sun. He wanted to know the presidential priorities. He wanted to know the endowment. He wanted to know our 5-year strategic plan. He wanted to know everything. I was fairly prepared because I was so new that, like, I had what I called like my Bible of that organization and had taken so many notes when I was meeting with people. And so I generally knew I could handle it a little bit. However, like, there were just certain questions that he asked that I was like, I think it's this. Instead of being like, I don't know, let me get back to you, which now I would say. I wanted to do a great job. And so I get back to my hotel and my vice president calls me and she's like, do you know why so-and-so has called the president after your visit? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, they looked up some of the stuff that you had said and it wasn't exactly right. And I was like, oh, okay. And so that, like, was such a good learning experience for me. One, like, be prepared. But two, also, if you don't know, say you don't know. Because you know what it does? It allows you the opportunity to circle back around and be like, hey, I'm not 100% sure on that. Let me check and get back to you. And then you're building relationships. You're building trust. You're building, And so I think for me, that was like, I had this idea of going in and making an ask for a leadership annual gift. And the meeting just got derailed and I wasn't able to do that. And so that was something that was just very humbling, I think, but also a good learning experience right out of the gate. I mean, I think I was 23, 24 years old.
Right. My guess is you never made that mistake a second time.
No. But I think it's also important to know, and I've told people this, like people that I've managed, like,
no.
We are human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to grow. But like, how do you respond to those?
Yeah. Well, Brieanna, this has been absolutely amazing. If folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they go about doing it?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Brieanna is spelled Brieanna, Quinn, Quinn. We can also thank my dad for that spelling. He wanted all the vowels. But yeah, I try to. So if you followed me on LinkedIn, you'll see that I went through about 7 months of looking for a new opportunity and really just sort of found my people and was very vulnerable, very transparent, very authentic about trying to find a new role in the nonprofit sector. And I try to pay that forward. If people reach out to me and they want to connect, they want to have a 15, 30-minute conversation, I try to say yes to everyone, just so that I can pay it forward. I mean, I have talked to people in Africa. I have talked to people in Switzerland. I have talked to people in the United States. And so, yes, please reach out. Like, happy to just have a conversation. I think we're all in this together.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.